Fifth Avenue in New York in 1900 was all horses. Same street 13 years later, all cars. So we can make dramatic transitions. We have to work together rather than poking a stick in each other's eye and wondering why we're not solving the problems.
Hi, I'm Amanda Bloom, and welcome to Hanging On by a Thread. On Saturday, August 22nd, the planet ran out of resources. Known as Earth Overshoot Day, this date is the turning point in which human use of natural resources surpasses what the planet is able to sustainably provide in 1 year. We are gobbling up resources faster than the planet can regenerate them, and using 1.6 Earth's worth of resources in a single year. Since 1970, resource extraction has over tripled, according to the UN Environmental Program, resulting in unsustainable consumption. So how can we fuel and support our lifestyle as we not only run out of resources, but degrade the earth until they can no longer regenerate? Well, solving this fuel crisis is inexhaustible energy. Inexhaustible energy comes from sources that can never be depleted, meaning there is no recovery time. Currently, scientists propose two distinctive types that could benefit us now and in the future: solar and geothermal. Energy from the sun, known as solar energy, can be captured through solar panels and directly converted into electricity. A special type of material called a semiconductor has electrons that can become loosened by solar rays, directly creating an electric current. As the sun shines in every country, solar energy can be harvested anywhere, making it the most easily accessible source, and, most likely, making it one of the cheaper options. Solar panels could be easily integrated into our cities and homes right now. Geothermal energy, although facing multiple challenges right now, could also be the future of sustainable energy along with solar. Deep inside the earth, radioactive decay causes extremely high temperatures, meaning if you pump hot water or steam from deep enough underground to the surface, it can be transformed into electricity. Geothermal power plants can use the steam created by the scalding hot water to turn turbines. This creates kinetic energy, which activates a generator and becomes electricity. However, unlike solar energy, geothermal extraction techniques are still flawed. As of right now, there is a limited supply of what can be harvested and where with our current techniques. If technological advancements permit, geothermal energy could be the energy of the future. Carbon taxes seem to be one of the most effective solutions in reducing carbon emissions. Those who emit carbon must pay a fine to the government, incentivizing both industries and households to reduce their usage. These taxes make carbon footprints more apparent, since oftentimes the only visible ramifications are on the environment.
The most efficient thing to do would be to adopt a carbon tax. And that could either be revenue neutral in the sense that every dollar that comes in would be then redistributed back out to the taxpayers, but it would come in based on how much carbon you emitted, how much gasoline you used, or natural gas, or the other ways that you emit carbon. And so it would create incentives to use less.
That's Michael Vandenberg, former EPA Chief of Staff and a professor at Vanderbilt who specializes in environmental governance.
Or we could have it set up in a way that it retained the assets or the money that we would get from the carbon tax and use that money to try to achieve greater justice. So, in other words, to try to offset the higher power bills that people who are less able to pay those bills might otherwise face.
However, these taxes would increase the price of anything involving the burning of fossil fuels, meaning gas and electricity would become more expensive. Vandenberg believes Americans would be unsupportive of a carbon tax for this reason.
I think in this climate, all we need to do is look to see how deeply the American public reacted negatively to higher gas prices in the last 6 months to realize that a carbon tax is an unrealistic option in the near term. People simply are not worried enough about climate change to be willing to bear the burden of a carbon tax. That would be the best one, but we haven't been able to mobilize that kind of response.
So, in order to reduce emissions, the best option seems to be prioritizing small emission reducing pieces of legislation that build on one another.
I think the severity and the urgency of the emissions cuts we need for climate change suggests that we can't afford to follow this panacea bias or Disney's law. We have to be realistic. We have to do those things we can do. And what we have to do is get a series of wedges of emissions reductions. So, incremental emissions reductions that all piled together will help solve the problem.
Emissions from the transportation, building, and industrial sectors account for 65% of all greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. So, it is of the utmost importance that we address this.
Buying an electric car plus electrifying buildings Plus, decarbonizing the electric grid altogether can reduce emissions by about 70% in the United States. And that's a huge reduction. And all of those are things that we can very much do. Major companies, state governments, and the federal government are all pushing to decarbonize the electric grid. Electrifying transportation ultimately saves consumers an enormous amount of money and doesn't have tailpipe emissions. Electric vehicles are still better for greenhouse gas reductions than driving fossil fuel vehicles. And then electrifying buildings just allows you to provide services through a decarbonized electric grid that are zero carbon. So those are all things we're going to do and we can do.
Despite all the challenges that come with updating entire systems rooted in fossil fuels, we must save the planet. The time is now. Humans have been destroying the planet for hundreds of years, and it is up to us to fix it.